Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Skinwalker Ranch panel at All the Strange. I'm Maureen Elsberry from Rogue Planet. Today, I'm happy to be joined by an awesome group of people, some of the team from the ranch and from the show of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. We have executive producer of the show, TJ Allard. Yes?
Yes, that's me.
And we have the ranch superintendent, Thomas Winterton, ranch manager Jim Morse, and the head of security Bryant Arnold, otherwise known as Dragon. So thanks for joining us today, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start you all off with a softball, and I want to start with the ranch crew. Just if we could go one by one and tell us a little bit about your job role and how you got involved at the ranch. So let's start with you, Thomas.
I'm the superintendent. I basically oversee all of the facilities. I oversee the ranch and coordinate efforts between the scientists and security, and then making sure the infrastructure and everything's in place for both of them to be able to do their jobs. So Jim Morse, the manager, is actually the one that got me involved. He happened to stay at my little motel here in Roosevelt on his way into town when Brandon first bought the place. And we struck it up, and he asked me as a general contractor to come out and to do a property inspection. And through that and helping in assisting Brandon and Jim in upgrading the facilities out there, Brandon asked me to just stay on and oversee it.
Awesome. It's all about who you meet in the weirdest of times. So with that, let's hit you up, Jim.
Thanks, Maureen. Appreciate that. Tom's pretty much nailed it. This whole situation with the ranch, as I reflect back on it, with the opportunity of initially going out to the ranch with Brandon Fugel, who for the longest time really wanted to stay in the shadow. I don't know how much you know personally about him, but just one of the who's who and on the Wasatch Front. The guy, I go all the way back to him when he was 18 years old. And so there was a level of loyalty, a commitment on my part. Anytime the gentleman calls, I'm not only at attention, but pleased to be there. So we flew out one early morning, about 7:30 a.m. And of course, I've had a little bit of a background working with Native Americans since I was a young adult. And never been really out in the basin, Roosevelt. And so after he initiated the opportunity to go out to the ranch, we started to go out there on a weekly basis. And Thomas Winterton was the first gentleman that I had contact with, and to talk about good omens. And this wasn't by chance. This thing has unfolded as if it was what would you call it, destiny. And so Tom has been heaven sent, not only personally to me, but to the ranch. And the rest of the story, I think some of the viewers are getting from some of these episodes. But this is an opportunity for the audience to look at real substance and not just smoke and mirrors. So.
Sure. And what is your general duties, would you say, on the ranch?
The reality of it is I'm out in the valley, the Salt Lake City Valley, between Tom and Bryant. They're hands-on, and in some respects 24/7. So my real job has been real estate development, commercial, Class A office buildings, hotels, and but there was an immediate synergy and respect that I had for Tom Winterton, not only one of the great contractors out there in the basin, but a hands-on. The word cowboy is thrown around a little bit, maybe in the East, but this is a guy who is a real cowboy. This is a guy that will get out and brand. He can ride a horse, I'm sure, with the best of them. He is fantastic when it comes to equipment, heavy equipment, and it is a big picture on that ranch. This, as I said, is not smoke and mirrors. This is the real deal. And this is a ranch. You've got cattle out there, you got irrigation, you've got the public relations associated being out there in this very remote area on a reservation. And the Winterton family has a very profound, good name. And I can tell you, we lucked out. So, yeah.
Oh, awesome. And yeah, so from what we've learned from Brandon, obviously we've learned that loyalty is extremely important to him. And somebody else, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Bryant, but you've also known Brandon since you were 18, correct?
Yeah, 18, 19, somewhere in there. Brandon and I go way back. And, I guess it's that relationship. And for years, I've just been a close friend and confidant, and if he's needed something done, I've been able to help him get that done in various respects. And so when he purchased the ranch, he asked if I wouldn't go out and check things out, and it became evident that we needed a security presence there with the interest of the place, as well as, some of the natural dangers, as well as the unknown dangers, which we're actually trying to find out right now. And so, I took it upon myself to really head up that effort, and I take it seriously. And one thing Brandon knows about me is I'm not afraid to put my nose in there if I have to, whether it ruffles feathers or not, but he appreciates that, and he knows that I'm going to shoot it straight with him, and that he can trust me, and that, I've got his back first and foremost, and that, I'm going to do what it takes to make sure the people that are out there, to the best of my ability and within my power, stay safe and taken care of, and that we most importantly preserve the science integrity of the work that's going on there, because it is a living laboratory. He's invested a lot of money in the equipment and everything else associated with the ranch, and every time an outside presence comes in there and everything else, it can mess with that data and rob us of days and weeks and months of important things. So I know you didn't really ask about my duties necessarily, but really at the end of the day, it's my relationship with Brandon that got me associated with it in the first place. So
yeah, and I think it's great, because what the audience may not know, but we've tried to, at least on our podcast, Skinwalker Debrief, is bring forward that you were all a team prior to the show happening. So, TJ, why don't you take us through a little bit of how the show came to be?
Wow, that is, I don't know if we have that much time. I can give you the brief overview, the brief version. It all started way back when. No, I guess what it was is in pitching shows and doing show development for a while, anytime you would pitch a show that was, in that world, and I hate to say that UFO world because it encompasses so many other things, just the unknown stuff, quote unquote. Anytime you would pitch that, they're like, well, yeah, it's not Area 51, or yeah, it's not Skinwalker Ranch. And I just heard it so often that I finally was like, enough. What is it with this? It's time. And it just seemed to me after, and I had known about the ranch for years, and it was kind of that untouchable, you hear about it and people would talk about it. And it almost seemed like everyone knew about it, but no one knew anything about it. So I just, fine, enough. And I just started digging into figuring out how do you get in touch with them and really truly make some kind of connection that you can say, hey, look, we really want to bring this to the public. It's time for people to see this. There's too many unknowns, too many questions, too many rumors, and just let's get to the truth of this. And it just so happened, my timing just happened to be, fate was smiling upon me because I just happened to have really good timing. The ranch had just changed hands, and Thomas was the gatekeeper. I mean, he was, I'll never forget, all those calls I had with him and him saying, look, man, if anything, I'm kind of like the janitor. That's what I am here. And it's like, dude, you're not the janitor. What are you talking about? No, you don't understand. And, I talked to Thomas for months and months. And it's funny, I've told these guys, I still have all of the text messages that I've ever written back and forth, because funny enough, there was never emails and very few phone calls. If people believe that, it's crazy. That's the way kind of stuff happened, was through text messaging. And it was, random texts back and forth for hours, and then just constant getting to know people. Like, it took me, months. I mean, Thomas, it has to be at least 6 months, 8 months more. Well, I mean, maybe before we actually kind of started talking on the phone. Is that right? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think from your first contact, because when you first contacted me, I told you, I don't think that we're interested in that right now, but you never know, the situation can change. And so I told him, you're welcome to contact me again in the future if you'd like. And he took that to heart, and it was mostly over text, but I do remember that you were faithful about calling once a month. Absolutely. And I mean, you checked in once a month, but I do think you're right. I think it was like at least 6 or 8 months before you finally got to go to the next.
Right. And that was funny, because the brief version was, Thomas was like, finally, all right, man, listen, you got to call Jim. Here's who I want you. And he kind of almost scripted out what I needed to say. So Jim didn't think I was some crazy person calling him. And he was, let him know that I was the one who, referred you, and let him know what you do and what your intentions are. And then, Jim, finally, I got to speak with Jim, and, it was the same thing. It was slow going. He was a little tepid at first, but of course, like, Jim is he wants to give you a bear hug. He's like, he loves everybody. So it's one of those, like, he welcomed me right in. And then it just, over the course of another 6 months plus, it took me to get to know Jim. And, and Jim, is that safe to say? Like,
Yep.
I mean, another period of time, like, it was more months, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what touched me about TJ, obviously very tenacious, but in a polite way. He's what I call a real gentleman. And, it was baby steps, because of the design of the ranch, where Fugel wanted to stay really in the back. Didn't want the exposure. Between Thomas and myself, we tried to shield the new owner as much as we can. And it's easy to get stigmatized, where, you get into paranormal, you get into ufology, and everybody looks at you like some crackpot. And yet, we're business people. And so, yeah, you're absolutely accurate. And if it wasn't for Tom, because we get people coming out to the basin, and they'll go to the locals. Do you know where Skinwalker Ranch is? Do you know how to get a hold of somebody? And the names are legion. I'd come out there, and every time I come out, I've got a note slipped to me. Professor so-and-so, would love for you to call him. You get inundated, literally, with the curiosity associated with this ranch. Yeah.
So and I approached it. Cool. And I approached it like it was like these guys were businessmen, but they, just like in any business, you want to work with people that you are drawn to, that you like, that you're friendly with, and that you can trust. And I think that over time, it's, when you realize, yeah, I'm not just in this to try to, oh yeah, let's come in and make a crazy kind of show or something ridiculous. Like, no, we want to do what's right for the ranch and to present it in the way you guys want to. And after a while, it just finally clicked. And, it's funny, when I first went out there, it was, I went out with Joel Patterson, who I did this with, kind of worked with me in bringing this to Prometheus, and he I don't even think I told Joel at that time what Brandon's name was, because we used to call him Poe on the phone. Our code name was Poe, for short for property owner. And so I would never, because there's all these rumors about like how people are listening to your phone calls, and Skinwalker Ranch is total, it's government, and it's this and it's that, and it's like, shit, man, I better not say anything that could, make me look bad or put me in a bad place. Like, I can't say this guy's name. What do I know? Like, all of a sudden, guys could show up in front of my house and put me in a van and never see me again. So I took that all to heart, like this entire idea of the secrecy and keeping it close. Like, look, this is what he wanted. And so I made sure, hey, he was Poe. You can't call him anything else. And even when we first brought the History Channel out there, at breakfast, the first time we brought one of the History Channel people out there, Brandon sat down and he was like, hi, I'm Brandon. The guy was like, huh? And he's like, oh, yeah, we never told you his name. I'm sorry. So this is like they're at breakfast the first time these people are meeting him and getting his name. So there's a lot of secrecy around it, and it was just a lot of trust stuff. And these guys were great. They let me in, and the rest is history, or seeing it unfold in front of us. But that was a long journey, and someone had to do it, and it just happened to be me. I was the one who kind of just didn't stop until it was going to happen. So somebody made it happen.
Well, good for you, because as all of us are super fascinated by the ranch and the topic and what the heck is going on there, it's great to have that insider view. Before we get into a lot of the filming questions, I want to ask you all each how you think your perception has changed since when you first came on the ranch. I'm sure this is kind of a weird thing. You have this person reach out to you or your friend that says, I'm buying this ranch. There's a lot of strange stuff happening on there. Go explore it. Let's do a scientific investigation. To what you've experienced over the course of the last 4 years investigating the ranch, how has your perspective changed? Let's go ahead and start with you, Jim.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. My perspective of the ranch, my background was before, during the tail end of Vietnam, I was a military police officer. So I've been in that Area 51, sit on the military advisory board of the state. That ranch, when I went out there, had a frequency or a vibration that was so different than anything else I'd ever been engaged in. I'm not a tough guy like these other two guys, but I'll tell you, the darkness makes me weary. Some of the people that we have engaged and brought out there the last few years, they have had experiences that I've personally witnessed and can't divulge right now. And really, what I'm trying to do is bring in more of the spirit. There's a lot of science out there, and they're validating a lot of things. But I've always tried to embrace not only this property, but life with a level of respect. It's real simple. Treat people like you want to be treated. And so that property out there, because of where it's located out in the middle of the basin of the reservation, there's a lot of things that have happened out here, good and bad. And that's where we get into the lore of the Skinwalker. So as far as experiences and trying to get perspective, that property is absolutely an enigma to me. It seems like, and it's very random. There's times that you go out there and you feel a level of peace. I know that Bryant has shared that he can go out there and he feels a closeness with his father. There's times I go out there and I think this is beautiful property. There's other times I go up there and I actually can feel it as I'm driving in from Salt Lake City. By the time sometimes I'll hit Duchesne, it's like there's an uneasiness. There's something in the air, that synergy. It's like walking into a room where somebody's having a bad day, and you pick up that vibe. And there's other days that ground I can go out there and you can actually feel it in your sinuses. You can drive around in what I call the Pope Mobile, and there's just something out there. It's like the spirit's moving around. We brought out some of our Native American practitioners. A couple of them said to me, do you feel this weight on us? And his word was, do you feel these watchers? And there's times I do. There's certain parts on that ranch that we'll talk about Homestead too, that brings an uneasiness, personally to me, to the point where obviously we're very protective of Thomas, and Thomas has had issues out there, physically, which is not a figment of our imagination. I've been out there getting ready to leave to go back into Salt Lake City, had all the filaments in my ranch car completely blown out. So there's an energy out there. Sometimes it's stronger than others, but it's something I don't take for granted. So it's a really interesting. People talk about ley lines. They talk about this gravitational pull. It's got all of it. So we're not out there to try to blow somebody's mind with letting our imagination run wild. This is stuff that can be validated.
Absolutely. And I think you bring a very important role in bringing that the respect and the Native American lore and legend and the people into it, because they are at the heart of it as well. So that's very appreciative, I think, from not only my perspective, but from a lot of people's out there, because the science is extremely important, but there's that other aspect. So appreciate that. And you mentioned Thomas has gone through, obviously, some very disastrous health incidents. So Thomas, outside of just the health perspective, how has your mindset changed since working on the ranch?
It's turned 180. Coming onto the ranch, I'd heard all of the crazy stories living in the community, growing up here, but I didn't believe in paranormal. That coupled with, I had a strong religious upbringing that I'm grateful for, and so, I'd say between my religious beliefs and just my mindset, I come from a very scientific mindset. My brain needs to know how it works. It needs to be able to validate it through something other than just my imagination. And coming out there, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is there's a lot to this world that we don't understand. There's a lot left to be discovered. Both very, very cool, and also maybe some very scary things. And coming on not believing really in the paranormal and the skinwalker and the orbs and all of these crazy tales that have taken place. I've witnessed enough, I've experienced enough out on that ranch to now understand that I don't know everything, and so I have an open mind now, as far as I don't dismiss things automatically like I used to. I still have a hard time because my brain's still wired to want to know scientifically, what's going on, because I believe paranormal is simply just something that we don't understand the science on. And using a cell phone would have been considered paranormal 100 years ago because we didn't understand the science behind it. Now, it's everyday use. So, and really that's why I'm involved in this endeavor, is I'm hoping that we can learn some of the science behind the things right now we don't have any explanation for, so we assign it to this paranormal category. And my hope is that we can start to understand the science that's behind it and say, oh, okay, that makes sense. We understand how that principle works. But my views have been turned upside down in a lot of areas.
And I think that's important that you can come on and admit that, because it is, we're all kind of left in a question. And like you said, we're all just basically truth seekers in the fact that we want to know and explain things we don't understand. So, all right, Bryant, let's go to you.
When Brandon first told me that he was purchasing Skinwalker Ranch, I said, "You're purchasing what?" Because I honestly, growing up in Utah, but I obviously didn't grow up in the basin like Thomas did, but I had really never heard of it. I'd never heard any of the stories or anything like that. And, for those of us that know Brandon, he's something that doesn't even own a pair of jeans. So the fact that he was going to buy 512 acres of property in the middle of somewhat nowhere, it was surprising. And so he told me a little bit about it, gave me a little bit of the backstory and things like that. And so I said, sure, I'll go check it out. I love the outdoors. I love to do all that different kind of stuff. So I went and checked it out, and, you can't be associated with the place without somewhat absorbing the stories and the lore. And, there were a lot of fantastic stories, and that's kind of what I thought they were, fantastic stories, because for the most part, for a lot of the time that I was out there in the beginning, I never had any of those types of experiences where, it would make me think. And I refused to try and make things out of nothing, if you will, because I never wanted to say, okay, I'm going to become part of the narrative by saying, yeah, I've had all these crazy experiences because I've been on Skinwalker Ranch. It's just not who I am. And And so I never wanted to do that. And as time has gone on, being associated with everybody and having some of the experiences, some that were seen on, the television show, and some that, I've had personally, much like Thomas, my preconceived notion of what reality was kind of, made a complete 180. And, as some people saw in the episode where we did see the UFOs show up, it shook me because my rational mind couldn't make sense of it. And I think, really that's what got me feeling that somewhat, motion sickness feel and everything, as my heart rate started to race and my adrenaline was rushing and everything, because my rational mind was trying to make sense of what my eyes had just seen. And there's no getting past what I've seen and what I've experienced. And so, we're somewhat programmed to believe, what reality is, or what we've been somewhat shaped to believe what reality is. And once, I went on the ranch, I pretty much had to scrub that from my mind, because what I'd grown up believing, I've grown up as just stories or science fiction or whatever, I've been witness to some of those things and never be able to deny them, nor do I want to. And I can say 100% that there is something we can't explain going on at Skinwalker Ranch, and it's something that I'm anxious to see if we can manage to. But as far as my mindset, I think I went in with an open enough mind that, I wasn't like, oh, this is all garbage and this is all, not true, because I didn't want to say that I'd had experiences. I also didn't want to discount people for saying that they had those experiences. And so now that I've been able to be a part of it and be associated with these people, and see the things that I have, my perspective on the universe or existence or, the normal mindset has completely changed.
I think you just have already, in that, encapsulated the answer to my next question, which is, I'll ask everyone, as much as you feel comfortable, what is the most perplexing or mysterious thing you've personally experienced or seen on the ranch? And perhaps that UFO isn't that for you, Bryant, but I believe it might be.
As far as visually, definitely. I mean, there was no mistaking, and it's unfortunate that the cameras didn't do it justice, because it was a pretty spectacular thing. And the beauty of it is we had all kinds of instrumentation going off, as well as we had many eyewitnesses. We talk about the 5 of us that were standing on the helicopter pad at this time. We had a whole production crew that saw, much of what we did, and were shaken much like I was, because, they came into it going, yeah, we're here to make a TV show. And so that definitely was visually, but I think, the non-visual things, the feelings that I get on the ranch are probably even a little bit more profound, because there's times you go to sections of that ranch and you're almost overwhelmed with a good feeling. Jim kind of touched on that a little bit, and it's amazing. And then you can go to that same place, or even just a place a little bit further away, and it's the most dark, ominous, make every hair on your body stand on end type of a feeling, to where you almost feel like the world is coming in on you. And, it's that kind of, I guess the vastness in the feelings you can get there, and almost like there's, I hate to put it this way, but a good versus evil almost type, I'll say this, a light versus dark mentality on the ranch. It's almost like it's a bipolar place. It can be wonderful or it can be awful. And I think it's those feelings that have had the most effect on me, to where I treat it with respect, and, try and make sure that, I somewhat tread lightly around the place.
I think that's a good notice, that transient nature of the beast, so to speak, that we're seeing, that could be that good versus bad in different areas at different times. And you make a good point. The TV saw the witnesses as just the crew, but there were a lot of people behind that. And TJ, you are one of them. What, for you, behind the scenes, was the most perplexing thing you witnessed on the ranch?
the most perplexing thing I witnessed was, I still don't know how to describe it. I kept referring to them as potato sacks, flying potato sacks. And I know that Eric had one camera that picked them up while we were there. It was one of the first times I was there after Thomas had built the helicopter pad. After the helicopter pad was built, we were on the ground, and I don't know how else to describe it, but it just looked like a bunch of dancing potato sacks, literally, at the skyline, at the tree line. And there was no way that I could not have cut them off. Like, as I turned the corner, I grabbed my camera and I started filming just my cell phone camera. And as I'm running toward it, just as I turned around, got past a tree, you would think that, okay, I'm seeing a sprawling tree line. I would be able to see them, like if it were birds or something else just flying away. And nothing. And it was like, there's no way that it's not possible. And luckily, because I thought I was losing my mind, I'm pretty sure everyone thought like, oh, he's making shit up. No, I'm looking at this, chasing it around this corner. And it's like, no, I know how to use a camera. I know what I'm doing. And luckily, Eric, one camera caught the tail end of one of these things just kind of whipping around a corner. And thank God, because it felt validated at that point. But it was something that I just could never, I don't even know what it was. And, I kept trying to rationalize it as a bird or something else, or as something just being kicked up from the helicopter. But it was too far away for that. And it moved too intelligently, so to speak. I mean, I don't want to say like it was being piloted or driven or something, but it was just something that knew to get the hell out of the way. And I just don't know what else to say. I mean, that, from what I'd seen with my own two eyes, that was probably the most perplexing thing. I mean, a lot of other stuff has happened there, but that was the thing that really got me. So
that provided me with a very, not to make light of it, a very odd image. I'm thinking of a potato race in the sky.
Yes, and, yes.
Now that's all I can imagine.
You know what? Here's a better descriptor. Was the the wraiths from the Lord of the Rings? The five horsemen, mm-hmm. and how they were kind of like just like cloth-ish, like that ragged cloth. Like they weren't a physical form, but just like a ragged cloth. And that's kind of the best way to, a better descriptor than a potato sack. So to give you a better visual than a potato sack race in the sky.
I kind of like potato sack.
Yeah. The Lord of the Rings makes it a lot more ominous.
Right? And it was. I felt it was ominous, but yeah, it was. It's pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing.
So Jim, how about you?
I've worked around canines, being a military police officer, and go through perimeter checks. And there was one evening I was out there with 3 or 4 separate people. We're not family members per se, and we've got this like infrared light that we can go as we're on patrol, kind of hit the book cliffs. And this individual I was with acknowledged there were some red eyes that were looking at us. And I acknowledged them. The red eyes was that, was just looking through me. It was not a mountain lion, which we have out there. It was not an owl. And I validated, along with 2 or 3 other people, what is that? And piercing red eyes, and a lot of people out there can say, hey, you saw a skinwalker, a shapeshifter. I don't know what it was, but as I tell people, to my knowledge, that was something not from this earth. That was a little bit of a wake-up call. But as Bryant alluded to, just that feeling, that you get with people that are light workers, and then you get people, unfortunately, that are burdened with life, and you can just feel that downer when you're around them. And that ranch, unfortunately, has those feelings, that mixed bag of good and bad. And, I think we all choose at this junction of our life to reach out and embrace the light. I know personally I do. I've been to the dark. That's not something I want to be around. I can tell you that ranch, fortunately, of family members, we get very concerned about the well-being of each of us. But there's things that happen on that ranch that don't know how to describe them. As Bryant and our other security, Caleb, have had things happen where, as if somebody in the middle of the night, somebody's going to their knee at the side of their bed. Thomas has had, verbally, he's witnessed things that has basically put him on notice. Get off the ranch. Those are things that I don't welcome, and I'm a scaredy cat, and less is more to me. So probably the red eyes is probably one of the most profound things that I've witnessed.
And that's one of the things that's long been reported on the ranch, and one of the things that I probably myself would find one of the most terrifying experiences as well, because it's so unknown. And like you said, a lot of times it's very visible that the people on the ranch know how to decipher animals and animal eyes and things like that. And this clearly something different and unique aspect is terrifying. I mean,
that's a feeling when something looks at you as you're looking at me, and they look right at you, and it penetrates your soul, your spirit, and then looks away, acknowledges, looks back at you, and then dissipates. So I'm not sure how to embrace that other than the feeling that very uncomfortable, not something that I was willing to walk towards, and I've yet to see it again. But
yeah.
There's other witnesses that I have been with that have seen things, and there's no reason for their imagination to run wild. So there's a lot of unknown out there, and I think and I really believe what's going to happen, if there's such thing as another season out there, things will continue to come to the forefront. It's very active out there right now.
I think we all hope so. And Thomas, you probably, at least from what we've seen out of this specific ranch group, have suffered the most medical tragedy on the ranch, I should say. So what for you has been the most mysterious experience, if it is something other than that?
I've spent literally thousands of hours on that ranch since coming onto the team, and I don't know if it's because of the amount of hours that I spend, or if it's because there's something in me that singles me out. But my injury definitely takes the cake. That turned my world upside down. Everything that was involved with that, from the physical injuries to the psychological events that took place during and after it, to the investigation that has been ongoing since I was released from the hospital. I feel like I've been living in the Twilight Zone, and so that definitely takes the cake. But outside of that, I think I've got 100 experiences out there on the ranch that are disturbing, that are scary, and I think if I could boil it down, it's the emotions that the ranch makes you feel. And I have experienced terror out on that ranch that goes beyond being scared. I've never experienced anything like it. There's been twice where it had, we're picking up these high RF signals, these high, these frequencies that are going on out there. I don't know if they're messing with my nervous system or what, but this terror is something that is I was shaking so bad both times that I could barely control myself. I couldn't control it, and it wasn't that I'd seen anything. It wasn't, the one was accompanied by voices warning me to get off the ranch, and I ignored it, and continued to go across the ranch when I experienced the one time. But it is terror that is so embedded. It just to your core that both times, by the time I made it home, I continued to sit there and shake like I had Parkinson's or something for hours, 12 hours afterwards, to where I'm still shaking uncontrollably, and I've never experienced that type of fear or terror in my life. The ranch regularly plays on emotions. I mean, if I find if I start spending a lot of time out there, it's almost like mood swings, to where I pride myself in trying to be even keel, to try to be consistent, and to be measured in my responses. And I will find, and so it's very unlike me. I find that I start spending a lot of time out there. The smallest, Jim has witnessed this. I mean, even Jim's probably next to my wife. Jim is probably my closest friend and confidant on this planet. And I mean, I could sit here all night and tell you good things about Jim and what a friend he's been. But even Jim has come on, and just the smallest little thing set me off. And Jim has witnessed it. He has been on the front end of that. And so, I don't know. That ranch place, before the ranch, like it's been alluded to, we're business people. I've owned and started several businesses, have been successful. I've held many leadership positions within the community, and even some state positions, and I've run several political campaigns. And myself, I had political aspirations at looking at running for office one day. And anytime you do that, you always measure your responses. How could this come back to haunt me in 3 or 4 years or 10 years? What am I doing? I've always been very conscious about what are the cell phones picking up, and it's going to show up in a campaign ad, 20 years down the road. And that's the way I've lived my life. But since coming on the ranch, I've pretty much thrown all those things to the garbage, because
all hope's lost. No, I'm teasing.
There's no chance of me running for office either.
Hey, you know what? There are so many political people that have been involved in UFOs and the paranormal, presidents, etc., sharing their UFO sightings. So it's not out of the question. And I commend all of you for all of those terrifying experiences and the good experiences, for continuing to go on the ranch and work. We are getting close to running out of time, so I want to do a quick rapid fire. We'll start with TJ. A quick two-parter. What was your favorite moment filming on season 1? And if you could do any experiment, if budget wasn't a question, what would it be?
My favorite always has to be the ground penetrating radar. I'll keep these really succinct. And if I could do any experiment, it would be one that I proposed in the very beginning, which was, I want to take huge speakers and play Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses and point the speakers at the ground, and every 15 feet just keep playing them and playing them and playing them to get the resonance of what's happening underneath, so you could see the vibrations and determine what the ground is underneath. But then you have Guns N' Roses, so you could get a little emotions out of it too. So not just the GPR, but the emotional response as well.
I bet you Axl Rose would be down to come on the ranch and play live.
Totally. Or Nine Inch Nails, one or the other. Either of those would be great.
All right, Bryant.
The whole experience with the TV show was crazy. It's definitely nothing that I've ever participated in. It's never anything I thought I would ever be a part of. So I guess seeing how all that worked was pretty amazing. Some of the results as to what we were able to capture in that time frame, because as dealing with the quote paranormal, there's no scripting it. There's no predicting what's going to happen. So we're fortunate that the ranch reacted the way it did, and I had probably one of the most profound visual experiences I've ever had when I witnessed the UFOs, and there's some other things that that took place that were very I don't know, they rocked my world a little bit. As far as experiments go, there's a lot of things that I would love to see happen if budget wasn't an issue. But there's a simple one that I would like to see too. We have our ranch dog, William. That I'll tell you, that dog, he knows where all the secrets lie there. I begin to wonder. I ask him face to face if he's a skinwalker, because you'll be going along and he'll be walking along the mesa and you'll see him 1 second, then he's gone, and then he appears again somewhere else, a few hundred yards away behind a rock, or he just disappears altogether, and he's a black dog. I mean, it's crazy. And so I'd like to actually rig him up with cameras and have him, who has free reign, he's not constrained by anything like that, go and just do his thing, and then be able to, see where he goes, what he does, what he discovers, what he sees, things like that, because he's very intuitive, that dog, and he knows. Thomas has witnessed. He's basically tried to stop him from going to places on the ranch where he'll step in front of the vehicle and not let him go, because he can sense that there's something going on. So I know it's not the most expensive, crazy thing, and we do get a chance to do this again. I'd like to pitch that, to the production people, because I really think, he's a ground level, eyes on the ground, and he's seen about every inch of that place. And I'm sure if he could talk, we'd have some amazing stories to tell.
There you go. They make doggy harnesses for GoPros. It's whether the GoPro behaves on the ranch that's the real question. So Jim, how about you?
I'm flattered to be a part of the team, but to be completely frank with you, feel a little camera shy. When I get out there, all I see is more than a middle-aged man. I see a guy that's got a receding hairline, so I wear a hat, and overweight, and so I really insulate myself with these good-looking guys. I'm flattered when they call me Uncle Jim. But this isn't just Hollywood. This isn't just talent. I mean, you get guys like Travis on there, and Eric, and Dr. Segala. These are the real deal. These aren't wannabes, So these guys flatter me. They insulate me. There's a level of respect and love that we have for each other. There's a level of unconditional love that goes to it. But the wrath of that ranch, as Thomas alluded to, is real. I've been, I run a river with Thomas Winterton, but that ranch, and I can't bring up names, I've watched it literally just prick the personality, and in a couple of cases, as we're heading back into Salt Lake City, you think there was exorcism going on in the car. It's going to be an interesting season if they have another one, because as Brandon Fugel always says, we're just getting warmed up, and there's a phenomena out there that it'll be interesting to see how it embraces us and we embrace the phenomena. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Uncle Jim, you look great on camera. Don't worry. I think everyone's tends to be self-critical when they see themselves on camera, myself included. And
best in the business, Uncle Jim. Best
definitely.
In the business.
And let's finish off with you. Let's finish off with you, Thomas.
So my favorite has to do with Travis. And when Travis first came on, from the things that were said, I really felt like he thought that we were a bunch of crazy dummies. Matter of fact, I think his exact words were that we were all batshit crazy. And saying that, I have worked alongside closely with the principal investigator, Eric Bard. I don't know that I've ever had the privilege of speaking to someone that has more intelligence, more common sense. I will take Eric Bard to the bank any day of the week. And that guy is the smartest man I've ever been around, bar none. And watching how methodical, how meticulous he's been in this investigation from the beginning, very disciplined, very patient, and completely unbiased. And so I have to say, at the beginning of the season, I was kind of insulted with Travis and his connotations that we didn't know what the hell we were doing. He was very protective of Eric and his science. I will just tell you right now, that man knows way more than he will ever share publicly. I'll just leave it at that. So my favorite part of the season is, I think it's episode 5, and it corresponds with the scene that happened off the camera. The cameras had just quit rolling for the day. Travis comes out. Matter of fact, I think it was right after he got some radiation. It shows. He walks out and he throws his arms up in the air and says, "I think I'm batshit crazy." And then I think it does show in the episode where he says, "There's a good chance that Eric was right." And so me sitting at home on my TV, I'm yelling, "Hell yeah, there's a chance that Eric's right." That was the highlight of the season. As far as experiments, my wife and my life revolve around frequency. She is a resonant composer, and what she does is deals with frequency. So if I could do anything, we'd bring a grand piano on the ranch, on a specific place on the ranch that I would put this piano on, and we would play with some frequency. I've had some pretty knowledgeable people that claim that with the right frequencies, you could open portals. And so I think it would be fun to, if I had my way, I could do anything. It'd be bring my wife on with the piano and play with some frequency on the ranch.
Wow.
That would be a concert I would attend for sure. Sounds like we have a lot of musical things going on here. So thank you all so much for joining us. This was really insightful. And, Eric, unfortunately, wasn't able to join us tonight. But I agree with you, Thomas. He's a really fascinating and incredibly intelligent scientist and great guy. So, I encourage the audience, if you have not watched the show yet, watch the show. And then afterwards, come and check out the Skinwalker Debrief, because we get to speak to all these gentlemen more in depth, and you get to see things and hear things that you did not see on camera. So we're all crossing our fingers for season 2, and we'll keep you posted. But for now, that's all from the Skinwalker panel.